I'm not here for this. I'm not here for this. I don't know why it bothers me. I don't know why watching people glaze it bothers me. To borrow a term from people that are younger than me, although I'm not 45, contrary to popular opinion. Google has my age somewhere, although I think a couple of the spots have gotten it wrong, so you get to play internet detective on that. I'm not going to tell you. That would just be boring. The thing that bothered me is something, it happened multiple times in quick succession, and I realized I had a strong opinion about, it's almost like an awakening. You're sitting there, and I'm like, what do I want to talk about on Zealandism today? Like, what's the next ism? What is the next great ism? Well, I realized that I had strong thoughts about this, and then I've started recording. So I wish I'd thought that out a little bit more. Maybe we would be making some progress here. But we're talking about players and coaches whose sons are involved in the games themselves. This started watching Atletico Madrid. Diego Simeone's son, Giuliano Simeone, plays for Atletico Madrid now. He came in as a substitute. Full credit to him. Played fairly well. He aired a couple of passes, but he also had a really good cross that should have turned into a goal. I happened to be watching Atletico Madrid against Lille in the Champions League, and he was not like the worst player on the field. It wasn't obvious. This wasn't like some sort of charity thing where he was getting put on the field. Although that does happen in the world of football. If you remember Zinedine Zidane for Real Madrid, and him putting his son in like Champions League registration, he got a Champions League medal. I don't know what the hell happened to that guy. He might be playing in like the mid-level French league or something. And just to a point that I've not been able to pick out the next Zidane. But I don't know what happened to him. What I can tell you is he clearly wasn't somebody that you would have thought deserved to be in that registration for Real Madrid. But it was just a father doing something for their son. And before I drop into this too much, I do want to be clear that if I was Zinedine Zidane, if I was Diego Simeone, or if I was LeBron James, I would be doing the same thing that they're doing. But there would be something that would give me pause. Okay. And the Simeone kid's probably the least bad example because he definitely was able to show up and ball out. And I'm not saying Zinedine Zidane's son wouldn't run laps around me, right? That kid is obviously going to be really good at soccer. Even Romeo Beckham, when he was not in, fashion magazine photo shoots, which, fair play to you, dude. Your parents are like both models, right? He was a pretty darn good footballer, somebody that was definitely a lot better than me or you and ended up playing, professionally for a little while until he went, my parents are like billionaires. I'm just going to call it. Fair. But the one thing that would give me pause is it's just so staged. Some of this stuff is it's like stolen valor almost. If you're familiar with that phenomenon or that phrase, stolen valor is like the people that dress up like they're in the military. But they're not. I think it's actually illegal in the United States. It's like the most American thing ever. It's probably illegal in other places too for reasons that become more obvious when you think about it for 5 seconds while you're staring into a camera. But it feels like stolen valor. And the LeBron James thing, obviously, basketball's popular all around the world, but this exploded in the United States because LeBron James played with his son for the first time. The first father-son duo to ever take the court in the NBA. Right, they step out. It was like 4 minutes to go in the second quarter, but you have to understand the background of the entire thing, right? And there are these connections to the world of soccer, to the world of football that resonate. And it always, even back to Zinedine Zidane's story, it always felt weird to me. But the LeBron James one just brought this whole thought process all the way to a head, because LeBron James' son, Bronny, LeBron James Jr., but everybody calls him Bronny. He's very good at basketball. He's way better than me. Way better than anybody else watching this video, right? He went to college, which is the route. You go play in college for a year and then you go play in the NBA. He went to college. He was a fairly highly rated recruit, but even the recruiting ratings, you're wondering what the hell's going on a little bit because it's just impossible to be impartial. Like if you were watching Giuliano Simeone play for his dad, you're noticing him. Or if they'd brought in some other random ass right back, I'm not paying attention, right? I'm not noting every single thing he does. I'm not trying to figure out if he deserves to be there or not, right? If I couldn't tell you the last person registered for a couple of the other Real Madrid Champions League teams. It was only a news story when Zinedine Zidane's son was there. And I'm paying attention the whole time trying to figure out if he deserves to be there, because there's just this spidey sense in the back of my brain that's like, does he deserve it? Is he supposed to be there? And of course, we all stand on the shoulders of the people that came before us. Whether it be a parent that knocked a wall down, or, made things a little easier, or got you your first job because they talked to their friend, or got you, choiced into a different public school, into a private school, into, you got piano lessons from this person that your parents happen to know, like whatever. Everybody, your grandma knew this person, right? Like everybody's got that situation where there are those connections. But there are certain fields where we're just and maybe we are very uncomfortable with the idea of you being able to get into that field not on merit. Which brings us back to Bronny, because he's good at basketball. But if you're in the NBA, you're not just good at basketball. You're a god. The NBA is ridiculous. People, if you're watching this, you don't really understand it, right? If you're not somebody that follows basketball. Okay, but in football, in soccer, or American football for that matter, there are so many more spots in the top league or leagues, right? Think, like, if you're a good player, you have so many places to go. In the NBA, there are 400 roster spots. 400. That's it. And with the exception of a couple of guys that would rather be superstars in the European leagues, right, instead of play in the NBA, all of the best 400 players are in the NBA. So let's say maybe you have to be in the best 450 to 500 basketball players in the world to be in this league. And I feel incredibly comfortable, even though if I played Bronny one-on-one, he could beat me 21-0 1,000 times over. I feel very comfortable saying that, having watched him play college basketball and watched him play in the preseason, not a lot because it's preseason NBA, he's not one of the 500 best basketball players on the fucking planet. He's just not, right? Now, I get if you're LeBron James, you're like, I want to give my son the best start in life that I can. I want to play with my son. But LeBron James playing with his son in the last game was a photo op. It was a photo op to stroke LeBron James's ego, and I feel like is going to end up like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. And I wish Bronny was better, right? Again, he's very good, okay? I do believe if Bronny had played for 3 or 4 years in college basketball, he might have turned into one of those 500 best players in the world, right? Who's able to get into the NBA on merit and try and carve out a career for himself. But he was scoring like 4 or 5 points a game in college. Okay, there are guys that score 25 points a game in college that can't hack it in the NBA, right? I went to the University of Virginia, which that doesn't mean a lot to most of you. The University of Virginia won a national championship in basketball. The player of the tournament in that championship run, a guy named Kyle Guy, who averaged like about 25 points a game in the national tournament on the big stage in front of tens of millions of people watching on TV and packed full NFL stadiums watching the Final Four in the basketball national championship. 75,000 people in person watching basketball. And he was delivering master classes. He played in the NBA for 4 or 5 years, and that was it. He was forced into early retirement because he couldn't stick in the league. And he was just better than Bronny and so many of these other guys that were. I'm going to stop up for a second and say, I don't think Zidane's a bad guy. I don't think Simeone is a bad guy. I don't think that LeBron is a bad guy. I actually think LeBron is a fantastic guy. I think Zinedine Zidane's one of the best coaches, and so Simeone. Right now, I don't even mean to suggest that Simeone's making the wrong decision out of these 3 people. I'm almost making a mistake kind of lumping them in. Because for all I can tell, his son's actually like earned that spot. But watching LeBron and his son made me uncomfortable. There's one more part of this story that if you're not American, you don't know. And that is that the NBA adds players through a draft because it's the US, and that's just the way we've decided to do it. LeBron James' son was drafted right before the end of the draft by the team LeBron James played on. according to every report that they were saying very loudly and very publicly, if he was like drafted by any other team, he wouldn't play. So they basically bullied the team that he was on, which is the LA Lakers, into drafting him, and bullied every other team in the league into not drafting him. His agent, which is also the same as his dad's, also said that, if they draft him, he's not going to sign a two-way contract. He's signing a fully professional, two-way being you play with the reserve team. There are reserve teams in the NBA. And there are some swing players that go in there. And Bronny, by every scout's estimation, is somebody that could use some seasoning playing in those reserve leagues if he is ever going to turn into a guy that's going to make an impact in the NBA. But his agent came out and said that that's not a deal that they're going to take. And the team that LeBron is on basically just agreed to whatever he wanted to do, which I don't blame LeBron. He can make the team do whatever he wants the team to do. Okay, there is a cap limit on how much you can pay a player in the NBA, which means LeBron James is getting paid the same amount of money as a good number of other people, the other superstars in the league. But LeBron James is better. And even if he's not better than every single one of them, he has more gravitas. He is arguably the greatest player of all time. He is a media mogul. He is an icon. And he is the sort of person that you will attempt to keep happy no matter what. Because every other team in the league is basically going to be able to pay him the same amount of money if you don't. And so you do that by drafting his son, giving him a full first-team contract, and then subbing his son in for 3 minutes in the first game at the same time as LeBron. I don't know. Maybe, if I was LeBron, I'd probably be doing the same thing, but I feel like you're almost losing the forest for the trees here, right? Because if your concern is that Bronny is always going to be LeBron James' son, bullying everybody around you to jackknife this guy directly onto an NBA roster, at best before he's ready, and at worst putting him in a position that he's just never going to reach the ability to hold, you're just making it weird. You're obviously locking somebody else out of the league that otherwise would have that roster spot that deserves it. Because I don't think there's anybody that would argue that LeBron James Jr. deserves the roster spot. So that inherently is, a lover of the meritocracy of sports. That makes me uncomfortable, right? And obviously, if you're Bronny, your dream is to play in the NBA. So what are you going to tell your dad? No? You grew up with your dad doing this super awesome job being a professional athlete. Of course, you want to go along and do it too. And he just paves the groundwork for you, like the CEO that turns his son into the VP, even though he's barely worked at the company for 2 years. There's ways for this to work out normally. Like in baseball, there was Ken Griffey Sr. and Ken Griffey Jr. But Ken Griffey Jr. was a brilliant prospect, literally a Hall of Famer, right? And so when he made it into the pros, there was not a single soul on the planet that was sitting there going, why the hell is Ken Griffey Jr. here? And also, it's not Ken Griffey Sr. didn't bully the team into calling him up, didn't sub into the first game alongside him for a photo op. I've always loved LeBron. He's probably the best basketball player in the history of ever. This was just weird. I got no other word for it. It was weird. It made me uncomfortable. I don't even know who to feel bad for. I normally try to offer some sort of solution. I don't know if there is one, because I get all the incentives that every single person in this story has to just go along with it. I feel like I've covered all of them. But even though everybody's acting in their best interest here, it still just makes me feel weird. Maybe I don't know, dude. Maybe I'm alone in that. But let's just let other scouts tell you somebody's ready, right? Let other people make that decision for you.